I have Jon McDaniel here, one of the leading sommeliers in US market, and we're going to talk about trends for restaurants in 2024. Jon, which wines do you see that sommeliers should really add in January or February, when they open up their wine list leading into the summers? Like pick 3 or 4 varietals that you think you're going to bet on that and that will move.
Yeah, I think it's looking at, customers are coming in and they're thinking about the top 5 varieties. So they're going to ask about Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Grigio, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Cabernet. Like those are the big 5. So it's how to my goal is always, all right, if you're coming in loving New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, how do I get you to drink something else? Be like, if you like this, drink this. So, focusing on Southern Italian white wines that are crisp and aromatic and still great for the season and kind of year round. So Campania and those things, Greek white wine. So, I'm always trying to move those Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Grigio drinkers into something like that. Moving Chardonnay drinkers into Chenin Blanc and Chardonnay from other places that are not California. And obviously, when we're kind of coming into the beginning of 2024, it's colder all over the country. We're eating heavier, those kind of things. But it's, going into new things, challenging your customer a little bit because they can get, a glass of Napa Cabernet anywhere on planet Earth. They can get it in any restaurant. And so, why they come back to you is that, well, I had a Napa Cab, but it was a new producer that I didn't know, or there's something about it that was not just the same thing that you see in every single restaurant. And that's what really creates interesting wine programs, that creates, sommeliers that consumers want to come back for, is that it's like, I learned something, or I tried something new, or it wasn't just the same thing, but yet it was comfortable. Like I didn't feel like I was being given something that I was never going to have, or that they pushed me into some weird natural thing that I don't want to drink that. It's how you move them kind of step by step, so that it's still comfortable, it's still delicious, it's still enjoyable, but still you can kind of teach them something. And for your employer too, as a sommelier, is like, I'm always trying to keep my job. It's, you're showing to your employer that, hey, you're bringing people in, you're building a reputation for your wine list as something, as a destination.
Nice. One quick question on the wine list, right? Like define a good wine list. What is the purpose of the wine list, right? So if you, apart from the top sales and bottom line, how do you define in terms of the wine language, like what it should have? What is a component of a good wine list?
It should be easy, which is that's not really a fair response, but, it should be something where, no matter what I enjoy as a customer, it's easy for me to find it. And, that can be, if you have one page, that can be that it's laid out so that, all right, typically red wines are going to be at the bottom of the page. And how is that ordered, so that the customer isn't looking for Pinot Noir in the spot that Pinot Noir normally isn't, or those things. So it's how to kind of lay it out so that it's easy to read. What the varietal is, what the price is. If you have a big list, I've had wine lists that have been 50 pages long. They know exactly, if they love rosé, that they need to go to page 25 because there's some sort of indication of that. And so it's always about, within the first 30 seconds that the customer gets it, they know exactly where they can go based off of what they're feeling at the time. So like, I'm in the mood for a glass of white wine. All right, I know exactly where the white wine glass list is, or that kind of section. I'm looking for, a Barolo today. All right, I know exactly where that is. So it's all about just being able to know where to find it, which, some lists you got to search for what you want, and by that point I'm just going to have a cocktail.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Like you can imagine this when you walk into the store, right? Like that's where you see some stores are so perfectly organized that you literally can go there, find your thing, pick it up. But the moment you get lost, you may trade down or forget about or change a decision, right? Let's go on one more thing, which is really for the brands out there, like you being in the trade. I really want some real growth hack answers here on the sales process to knock and cold call restaurants, right? One of the hardest things is, I'll say the direct truth, which is to find sommeliers, who the sommelier is, who's the actual buyer, and when can this person be available to taste my wine? So how can I develop a nice sales process, a cold calling sales process to open new restaurants? What's your take on lead gen? What's your take on my biz dev process?
I think before you even get to that point, you have to recognize whether or not the account, your wine fits there. I've been presented so many wines, like, it's a tavern concept and they come in with something like no tavern that I would ever put that wine on the list. So it's doing a little bit of research before you even cold call that account and saying like, my Sauvignon Blanc would fit here perfectly because of X and Y and Z. That way you have that for as you're reaching out to that buyer and saying like, hey, I looked at your list already, love what you're doing. I think that my wine can fit in here. That's part one. So it's doing your homework and knowing who you're talking to. Then it's, if you're there already, having a glass at the bar, asking the bartender and saying like, who's your buyer? Who's your sommelier? Who's doing the wine list? You're investing in the process of that particular account. Or it's looking at, again, if you're doing your homework and you say, oh, I know who is the winery that has their by the glass Chardonnay. Reaching out to that winery contact. The wine world is so small that we have so many different contacts that are kind of interweaved there. Reach out to that winery that and be like, Dave at Rombauer or whomever. Like, I saw your by the glass at this place I've been trying to get into for 6 months. Who's the buyer there? How did you get in there? Utilize those contacts, utilize their networks, because everything starts out as a cold call, and I think that's the thing we need to remember is that there is a point that we don't have a relationship until we have a relationship. And so look at that of just be confident in it. Buyers get hit up all the time, and that's what you have to remember is that if I'm going to have a buy the glass Sauvignon Blanc, I have 58 different options between $8 and $10 wholesale. Why should I care about you? If you answer that question before I have to ask it as a buyer, that's going to be the easy part of it. So come prepared to that. The network of how to find people, there's no like sommelier Rolodex, or there's no LinkedIn for somms or those kind of things, which, I should really start that. But it's looking at like how that balance of, who to find, but it's also utilizing your network. If the buyer across the street, the buyer across the street knows who the buyer is there, and ask your network of people so that you're not just, going at info@restaurantx.com and asking like, oh, who's your buyer? But utilize your network of people. More people than you think that you do when you really kind of sit down and look at it. So use that network to really build out that 1 degree of separation, because, the wine world is 6 degrees of separation anywhere on planet Earth.
True. Super, John. Amazing. Anything else you would want to add?
Kind of going back to your question about the wine list and the ease of the customer. When I write a wine list, my goal is to never have to go to the table because the wine list is the sommelier. The wine list should say everything that you need to say. The server should be empowered to say like, everything my wine director gave me everything right here on a platter so that I don't have to ask him to come over. Because the consumer has that kind of fear of like, if the Somm comes over, maybe they're going to be condescending, or maybe they're going to take me for, all my money.
Maybe their budget is $12, but they're shy to say, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if the wine list, wine lists are very personal to me. It's like the autobiography of my life. It's all producers that I know, friends that I've been, places that I've been. If the wine list is good and fun to read and easy to read, the Somm will never have to go to the table, because the consumer can just say like, oh, that looks fun, and the server can confirm that, and then there you go. So that's the perfect wine list for me, is one that the Somm never has to go to the table.